Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Book Chat. I have a fantastic guest that I'm going to actually kind of pick her brain a little bit this morning. She is a memoir author, and that is a genre I have yet to explore in writing. So, this is going to be a great conversation. Let me bring her in and let her introduce herself, though. Hi, Miss Linda. Go ahead and
Hello.
introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your work.
Okay, well, my name is Linda Strader, and actually I've got a number of hats that I wear. I'm a landscape architect, certified arborist, watercolor artist, and twice published author. So I've written 2 memoirs, and they've been an interesting journey through my life. And I never knew I was going to start. I didn't know I was going to write a book. The first one got written, and then I was struggling with something to do because I felt lost. So I dove in and wrote a second book, the prequel.
Nice. And I am actually really fascinated by the fact you were the first female in the wildfire forestry fighting division, right?
So I was one of the first women to work on a U.S. Forest Service fire crew. What's interesting, so this is back in '76. Back then, they didn't keep track of gender.
Oh,
So they really don't have any records of how many women started that year. But I know I was one of the first because women weren't allowed before that.
that is crazy. Wow. So did you really
Yep.
with your memoir, did you kind of explore into why it was like that at the time? I mean, I guess as a female, we kind of partially know.
Well, I was so naive, Maddie, because I had no idea. I applied for the job because it was something that I thought I wanted to do, and I figured I didn't think that I couldn't do it. I mean, I was not a tomboy. I didn't consider myself a tomboy. I didn't dream of being a firefighter someday. I just stumbled on the job and I thought, oh, this might be fun and this might be interesting. And so when I started, I was all gun ho. I can do this. This is going to be great. And then when I started getting met with the attitudes of women belong barefoot, pregnant, and in the kitchen kind of stuff, I mean, they actually said that to me. So as I was just taken aback of, oh, great! This is this what I'm going to have to put up with, and exactly is what I had to put up with.
Oh,
And I didn't realize that at the time. I didn't know that I was one of the first. I just knew there weren't very many women. I didn't see very many, but I didn't think about why. And it wasn't until much later, the longer I worked for the agency, the more I realized that, oh, I wasn't welcome there. I was considered the token female, I filled the minority quota because that was the Equal Employment Opportunity Act passed in '72, but the Forest Service being all male for like 100 years, they were very slow
mm,
and very resistant against complying. So they were forced to hire women. So no wonder they resented me being there. I mean, they felt like I got the job just because I was female and not because I was qualified.
well, it sounds like you blazed a trail and kind of opened it up.
Yeah.
So that's
Yeah,
awesome.
I did. Didn't know I was doing it until I was writing the book, because then I started doing some research and realized, oh my goodness, I didn't know that. No wonder it was such a hard time. It's like.
Yeah. So, when you started the memoir, what inspired you to write down your life story?
Well, okay, so there is a very specific turn of events in my life. So I had had to make a career change after 7 years as a firefighter, and I ended up in college and I got a degree, and then I got married and I pursued my field in landscape architecture. And right about the same time that I lost my job, I had also filed for a divorce,
Ooh.
and my mom died.
Oh,
And it was a terrible time. And this was 2008 when the economy was just awful.
Yeah.
And my field just disappeared. So after 2 years on unemployment and not finding anything, I was facing the reality that, what am I going to do? I mean, this is the second time a career has failed me. So um, I ended up starting my own business and teaching classes in my community, and so that's how I survived. But in the meantime, I was not in a good place. Losing my mom was probably one of the hardest things I've ever been through, and I just felt like I have to do something because I was just going a little stir crazy. I mean, when you lose your job, you also lose your friends because, especially if you have friends at work, and so I really didn't have anybody around me, and so I was thinking about my past and that job that I really loved. And fortunately, I kept a journal, very detailed journals for many, many years. And I got to thinking that maybe I should start writing some of my adventures down because not all of them were in the journal, but I do remember them,
Hmm.
thinking, I should probably just write this stuff down before I forget. So 90 pages later, I started sharing it with a few friends, and they said, this is pretty good. You should add some more. It's not really long enough for a book. It's only 90 pages, and it's not really an essay. And so well, what the heck? What else have I got to do?
Yeah.
So I just dove in and ended up with 450 pages. And I'm like, I guess it's a book now. And so I I had no idea if it was any good. I didn't know how to write. I've written papers for college, but that's not the same thing. So I joined a writers group in my community and I hooked up with some published authors, and they encouraged me to start querying for an agent.
Mhm.
And in the meantime, I'm still editing the book. And so all of a sudden, it just kind of fell into place. But it did take me a very long time to get that book down the way I wanted it.
Mhm.
It just took 8 years,
Ooh.
which is not uncommon for memoirs, so I'm told.
Yeah.
8 to 10 years is usually, yeah.
That is crazy. And the dedication you had to do to stick with
Well,
waiting that long too. It's impressive.
oh, oh, well, I'll tell you, when I started getting rejections from agents like left and right, I was thinking, why am I doing this?
Yeah.
It's garbage, I need to stop. But then every now and then I would get one of the nice rejection letters, wow, this really has potential, but I think you need to work on the beginning. It didn't quite grab me. So yeah, I'd be really bummed out for a couple days. And then I thought, no, this is a good story. You just have
Yeah.
to figure out the right way to tell it.
Yeah.
And so I finally, after all the rejections and feeling like the writers group, it was a dead end. I'd go to these meetings and people would say, well, I think you should change that word to this word. That's not the kind of feedback I'm looking for.
Yeah.
I could do that forever, changing
Mhm.
one word. So I just set the manuscript aside and started over. And I rewrote the first 5 chapters and then started sending it out. I either requeried agents that kind of showed interest, but at that point, I also had started querying small presses
Mhm.
because you don't need an agent for those. And now people were paying attention. So I had several agents reading the full manuscript. I had 3 offers from small presses. And so I'd been doing that for a couple of years. So when agents take forever to get back to you,
Yeah, they
and
do.
I had these pending offers from small presses, and I thought, I should probably just go for this because, what if I wait 3 months and the agent says no, and then the small press says, "Oh, sorry, you waited too long."
Yeah.
So I just picked one of the 3 that I thought was the best offer and went with it, and I'm glad I did.
Yeah. Because here you are now with 2 books
Yes.
published,
2
and
books.
that's
Yeah.
amazing. It's always disheartening when you have to query and like try to get that
Ah,
work out there. Because I went through that before I turned to indie publishing, and it was like heart wrenching. You're like, okay, like what? So,
oh, I know. You have to have a very tough skin because it
yeah.
is, really difficult to have people tell you, not our thing. I'd heard that so much. Memoirs aren't our thing. They're too hard to sell. They're not famous. Well, I don't believe, the not famous part, because there's plenty of people who've written successful memoirs that were not
Yeah.
famous people. And so I knew it was how you tell the story.
Hmm.
And so I was bound and determined that I was not going to give up, because I didn't want to self-publish. And I figured either it's going to be accepted in traditional publishing, or I'm not going to do this. And so
Yeah.
I just kept being very persistence pays. It just does.
Yeah, it does. And you have to be persistent as an author, period. Like, because then
You
it
do.
turns into the whole marketing thing. Like, if you're not
Oh
persistent
yeah.
with all of that, you're SOL, so to speak.
Yeah, and no matter how you publish, you're going to be doing your own marketing.
Oh, yeah.
And you know, I, and the odds of you getting into one of the big five, I mean, are very slim.
Oh, yeah.
They may help, but any other publisher, they're going to expect you to go out and sell your book and
Hmm.
sell yourself. And with memoir, you're selling yourself.
Yeah.
To sell your story, people have to care about you, because it's your story about you. So there's a lot more personal when you give a talk. You talk about what I'm talking about here, the background of my
Yeah.
story and how I came about. So they get to know you. So it's and I didn't think I could do that, but I did fine. I've been on TV. I've have a segment on PBS.
Ooh.
It turned out to be a lot of fun. I mean, and it's not. I never considered myself that outgoing, but I discovered that, this is kind of fun and people are really interested in what my story is about. So it's not so bad. So I actually like it now. I know a lot of people hate it, and I can get it. It's hard
Yeah.
work.
It is.
It's really hard work. And, and you can have a book signing and one person shows up, and then you can have a book signing where 20 people show up. You just never know what you're going to get. And that's hard.
Yes, that is, because
Uh,
I actually
yeah.
had that exact experience. Like,
I,
I had my first, like, book signing
Mhm.
at a bookstore, because as an indie author, sometimes it's really hard to get into bookstores, and this was a smaller one that I got into, and she's
Mhm.
like, "Oh, we're gonna have this event and, like, have you guys do a book signing," and it was me and another author, and only one person came, and I was like, okay, like, this is a start. Like, I kind of
Yeah.
was warned, like, hey, don't be over prepared to be like swamped. And it's like, okay, like, I can handle this. This is a start. We're new territory. We're slowly getting
Mhm.
into it. But it's a lot of people have that expectation that they're just going to be like hounded for their first book signing. And yeah, so yeah.
No, and it's been, I always learn something from every book signing, because even if there is only a couple people, there might be one person in that too that you really connect with.
Yeah.
And they'll be like, "Wow, I'm so glad that I came today." And then all of a sudden the fact that there's only a few people there doesn't matter anymore,
Yeah.
because one person, has made your day.
Yeah.
And
You formed a relationship with them,
yep.
which is totally important. How do you like feel? What is your best method of kind of like keeping up with your readers? Do you have a newsletter and stuff where you guys chat, or well, they can respond to the newsletter?
Okay. I haven't done the newsletter thing, but I do have a blog.
Oh, yay.
And I try to, I add things to it when I can, when there's things of interest. I've written to kind of keep it going there for a while. I wrote, maybe a dozen articles on women first. So, the first woman to sail around the world, the first woman to climb Mount Fuji. And so I just put in these little things, and I generated some interest there. I write a lot of articles about writing and
Ooh.
what I've learned, especially writing memoir. And I put in, writer's tips and marketing tips, whatever I feel like, might be a beneficial. So a lot of it's all social media. I just share it either on Facebook. And I get a lot of people that come back to see what else I've written. And so and it's comfortable for me to do it that way,
Yeah.
because then it's like they make the decision whether or not they want to come see what I've got. And if I have anything new, or if I post something, or I'll see a question in a Facebook group. I do belong to a number of memoir writing groups.
Yeah.
And if someone says, "Oh, I can't market a book, I'm too scared," and I'll say, "Hey, go read my article about what I went through. You could do it if I could do it." And
Yeah.
I like to encourage people to not get so discouraged. And
That's
so
good. Marketing
that's
can be very discouraging and frustrating. So
it can, and what I discovered that it's not the buy my book marketing that you want to do. You want to just sell you and your knowledge. And if they like what they see, they're going to say, "So let me see what they've written." That's the kind of the backdoor version that I like to use. Because I've given talks to fire departments, and Girl Scouts. I did a talk to the Girl
Yay.
Scouts. They were having a career weekend for non-traditional women's jobs, which included
Ooh.
firefighters, paramedics, police, and so here's this group of 100 teens looking, to find a different kind of career. And so that was an interesting experience of talking to young people and having them ask me, "Well, if it was so hard for you, why would we want that job?" And I say, "We need more women in those jobs
Hmm.
because hopefully that will make it less difficult for us. The more that are in the career that we're being ostracized from, I think that's what's going to help. We all got to you think you want to do it, then don't let anything stop you. You just
Yeah.
got to go do it."
That is an excellent, kind of lesson and call to action for the women in general. I love that. And do you feel like that message really comes across in both of your memoirs? Because you've got the prequel kind of to that memoir and
Mhm.
the regular memoir.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, that was part of like the backstory was that I was very determined that I wanted to do something different. So that's the prequel. I was uprooted from Syracuse, New York, and moved to Arizona, and I didn't want to move. I was in the middle of my senior year of high school. It was a terrible time.
Yeah.
And yet I learned to love the place and I wanted to stay, but I also knew I was living in a really small town, 12,000. And so the job opportunities for a woman in 1973 were, sales clerk, secretary, fast food, waitressing. I just did not want to do that. I tried it, hated it, and I thought, I want to do something different. But what do you do? My parents couldn't send me to college. They didn't have the money. And what the heck do you do when you're 18, 19 years old and female? So to find something new. So my goal throughout that story is I want to do something different, but I didn't know what it was. So
Mhm.
there's a lot of lessons in there of I just didn't give up. I just kept looking for the right thing, and I stumbled on it.
That is awesome. I love that. That's very inspiring that you went for it and you were successful in it. Wow. So, in the writing
Y-
process,
Yeah,
what did you find was the most inspirational and encouraging for you?
you mean in the writers groups that I
Oh, just in creating, putting all your stories down into the book.
I think that it took me a long time to understand that whatever you put in there has to have a reason for being there. So it has to move the story forward. Um, so while it may have been an interesting event in your life, if it doesn't teach something or take me somewhere, I had to figure out how to take that stuff out, and that was hard.
Hmm. Interesting. And then, what defines success for you as an author?
I'm sorry, I lost you there.
You're good. I might be my connection. We've had storms. So, what defines success for you as an author?
I'd say just finding a publisher. I mean, for me, that was the most important thing to me was being traditionally published.
Nice. And then what was your writing process like? Well, okay, I say that. What was your writing routine when you were working on getting everything down? Did you try to write every day, or was it when just the inspiration hit?
I tried to write every day. Usually it was late afternoon when, because I'm also working, so I would get my work done and then I would spend an hour or so in the late afternoon. And if I had time in the morning, that's when I would do the editing part,
Mhm.
when I'm well rested and, but I seem to be more creative later in the day. I don't know why. You think I'd be tired, but I was more creative later in the day.
Do you feel like your creativity changed, um, like when it would hit during the day as you started writing the book?
Definitely. Not only, well, what I discovered is that the more I wrote, of course, the better I got at it. But I also found that I used to beta read for other people, and beta reading someone else's story helped me with mine because it's easier to find things that need fixing in someone else's writing than it is in your own.
Yes, I agree. Sorry, there is a little bit of lag.
Yeah, I don't know if it's probably my internet that's really messing us up because it's slow.
It happens. No worries. So you mentioned in the questionnaire that you're working on a kind of like was it an informed fiction story or like a realistic fiction story?
Yes.
Tell me a little bit about that.
Well, everybody, including my publisher, asked me if I was ever going to write fiction, and I said no. I'm terrible at making things up. So, 'cause it's when when you write what's true, I mean, the story's already there. You just have to figure out the best way to tell it, right? So, it's actually harder to write fiction, and I didn't think I wanted to do it, but I had an idea, and I'm working on it. But it is tough. I realize
Mhm.
you can go anywhere you want to, but that's hard. It's hard
Yes.
to know where to go.
It's almost like you have too much open space to play with.
Yeah, agreed, and it's like, and I'll write something and think, "Oh, that's terrible." So I've set it aside, and yeah, it's harder work than, I mean, writing memoir was hard work, but this is challenging.
Mhm. So, on top of the fiction thing, do you think you'll write? Sorry, my cat is playing in the background. Do you think you'll write another memoir story later on of more of like what's happened in your life?
Well, I've a number of friends that tell me I need to write a sequel.
Ooh.
Um, I'm not ready for that yet, maybe someday. I think my life is pretty boring now, but, um, I don't know. Maybe someday.
Yeah. Do you think the fiction stuff, once you get this first fiction book done, that you'll write more of it?
I might. I know that I really like to write, and so it's when the second book published, I was feeling a little lost, which is why I started, because it was the same story when the first book published. I missed writing, so I think I'll continue to write. I do take a break every now and then. I enjoy, writing essays or, just, things that maybe are just short stories because then it's something that it's a distraction from being stuck maybe where I'm at in a
Mhm.
particular story and you can finish, it doesn't have to be, 85,000 words. It can be something that's, you can whip it up in a couple days. That's satisfying too.
Yes, I love little like flash fiction short stories because it does like it resets your brain
Yeah.
and it always helps. I
Yeah. On those, there's a literary agent who runs contests every Friday, and she gives you it's a flash fiction contest, so it can be no more than 100 words, and she gives you 5 words that have to be included in the 100 words somewhere.
Ooh.
And it has to be a story in 100 words. It has to have a beginning, middle, and end. And I've written a couple that I landed in the finals, so they were fun.
That's awesome. I always like struggle with it just because I have to like condense it. I'm one of those people that gets really
Mhm.
wordy, and condensing it down is really hard. But it's a fun challenge to write that stuff.
It is, and I think, once to get it just get it down, and if it's 4 times longer than it has to be, then it really takes some creativity to figure out, "How can I still tell this story and eliminate more than half the words?"
Yes. Oh my gosh. Yes.
It's fun to do, it's frustrating, but
Yes. No, 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 fire. No, no. Sorry, cat. Nope. The cats invade every time. He's like, nope, nope. Sorry. All right, Miss Linda. So go ahead and tell our viewers and listeners where they can find you and your work.
Well, so my blog is, summersofirebook.blogspot.com. So you can find me there. All my books are on Amazon as well as, Barnes& and Noble and other booksellers. I have a Facebook author page as well.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being on the chat today.
Okay, well, thank you for your time, Ed. I appreciate it.